Hey, good Thursday, folks. Great to see you and welcome back. Got an update for you on what is shaping up to be a potentially big time winter storm for someone in the deep south. And that's what we need to find out over the next couple of days is who, how much, exactly when, and obviously the bigger question of where we could see those impacts by the time we get into next week. So we're going to talk about that in today's video. We're going to break it down for you. We're also going to talk about this Arctic air mass and potentially some snow in the Northeast during this weekend. So we'll have it all for you in today's video. Now, if you're new to the channel and you haven't already, go ahead, like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. That'll make sure you're up to date with the latest model guidance and a breakdown of that guidance as we continue this very active start to 2025. All right, folks, with that said, let's go ahead and dive right on into the data and get you up to date. So what you're seeing kind of loop next to me here, this is our overnight run of our icon model, and it's showing that potential for winter weather quite well there into the deep south with potentially even rounds of winter weather as we enter next week. Now, this is just one model. We're going to look at a bunch of models in today's video, but just continue to kind of keep this general idea in mind as we continue to move ahead. Now, if that didn't convince you enough and you don't want to listen to a college kid tell you, well, this is straight from the experts at the Weather Prediction Center, and this map shows the potential of where we could see enough snow and sleet for a significant winter storm of at least a quarter inch of liquid equivalent, and that would probably be about 4 or 5 inches of snow, maybe 2 or 3 inches of a snow-sleet mix. So they've already got one area pinpointed here. This is for Monday of this coming week, the 20th of January. They're highlighting areas of Texas and Louisiana. Not a huge threat, but a 10 to 30% chance of meeting that criteria for what I would consider a pretty significant winter weather event. That's Monday. Now take a look at Tuesday, folks. This is downright impressive to see a 30 to 50% chance of seeing a significant winter weather event from Myrtle Beach to Columbia, Augusta, into Wilmington, Fayetteville, even up into the Lumberton area of North Carolina, areas of deep south Mississippi, also seeing that 30 to 50% chance, and then that 10 to 30% chance from Southeast Virginia, Raleigh, Charlotte, Greenville, Spartanburg, Atlanta, into Birmingham, all the way down into the Houston area. So you get the point here. Yeah, the chances are still very much there for a big time winter storm in portions of the very deep south. And we're talking right along the coastline for areas potentially of the Gulf Coast or the Atlantic along that Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina coast. And if Tuesday wasn't enough for you, let me show you Wednesday. Still running a threat on Wednesday, that 10 to 30% chance of significant winter weather from Charlotte back down into Columbia, South Carolina, really the entire state of North Carolina and South Carolina, much of Georgia, and then even extending back into Shreveport and northern Mississippi and northern Alabama. So an active stretch next week of a couple of days where we have that potential for significant winter weather in the deep south. Now, before we get all into the models and data, we do have some stuff going on right now I do want to briefly mention, so stay tuned and we'll get back to that winter storm threat. Now, already seeing some snow out there from Michigan into Ohio, West Virginia, parts of Pennsylvania, even up into New York State. You're seeing that blue on the map here. A little bit of a clipper system working on through right now. Not a big deal, but dropping a little bit of snow in this region. Also some rain over the state of Florida this morning. And this is kind of a sign of things to come. A very active southern jet stream. That's going to be very important. Once our Arctic air spills south, does that link up with a storm system along the southern jet to potentially produce a big winter storm? And that, again, will be the question that we try to answer here in just a moment. Now, let's kind of time out the rest of this wintry weather ongoing through the Ohio Valley and into the Northeast. Like I said, not a big event by any means, but we are going to see some snow throughout the afternoon. So time right above my head, that's in Eastern time from our latest high-resolution rapid refresh model. And here we go. Through the afternoon, we've got light snow through Pennsylvania, West Virginia, into portions of southern New York State, through the Finger Lakes, Buffalo, Erie. I think even by later this afternoon, areas like Philadelphia, New York City, northern New Jersey could see some light snow showers, or at least some flurries flying around out there. Now, unfortunately for my snow lovers, not going to accumulate too much, but will be enough that it is worth mentioning here, and could accumulate quickly to maybe a dusting upwards to isolated places, seeing half an inch or an inch, but I wouldn't count on it. Probably more of just a novelty event, and that will last through the evening. You can see those snow showers, even trying to get all the way down into the Delmarva by the time the sun sets tonight. and even up into the Boston area through Connecticut could see some light snow showers. And then through the evening, and by the time we're waking up tomorrow, clearing out outside of another little piece of energy there, trying to swing on through the UP of Michigan. And then you can see our next storm system building in by the weekend. So not a big deal, but wanted to mention that for sure. Like I said, maybe a couple of inches in the mountains of West Virginia. Elsewhere, more of a dusting to an inch out of that winter weather event. All right, now that leads us into the next big story, and that is going to be this Arctic blast that could set up shop for that potential winter weather. So obviously, we like talking about snow, but we got to make sure we have the ingredients in place for snow, and ingredient number one always is going to be cold air. All right, so this is our 500 millibar height anomaly map. I might already mention that, but basically this just shows us where do we have pockets of warm air and pockets of cold air. Cold in the blue, warm in those warmer red and orange colors on your map. All right, so this is tomorrow afternoon, and what you're seeing is a little bit of ridging, as we call it, or that's this area of orange, or kind of this buckle in the jet stream that is ridging upwards into the eastern half of the country. That's going to warm us up a little bit tomorrow. It's been very cold. We're going to get back closer to average tomorrow, maybe even above average for portions of the plains. But behind it, look at what's looming back towards Canada, a big trough of cold air beginning to dive southward. And when I say cold air, folks, this is going to be the coldest air we've seen so far this winter. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the coldest we see all winter when everything is said and done. So we'll keep on moving it ahead into the weekend. This is Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon, folks. This is a downright nasty block of cold air, and impressive not only in its intensity, but also its size, stretching from California all the way to the East Coast Sea to Shining Sea, getting in on that cold air. Now, that is good news, obviously, if you're a winter weather fan. There's also some bad news kind of sprinkled in that. You see how cold this air is? Sometimes you can have too much of a good thing. And if this is a little too strong and a little too far south, that can kind of cut off our southern jet stream and leave us out to dry quite literally, meaning that we just can't really get a storm because there's so much sinking motion in the atmosphere due to that high pressure. That you just struggle to overlap the cold and the warm. Now, that's kind of the fail mode with this winter weather setup coming up. The cold air will not be a problem. We will have cold air. It's not something you need to worry about. What you need to worry about is will we have too much cold air for winter weather, whether that be snow and or ice. That'll be the potential here that we will talk about and be slightly, not worried about by any means, but that's the fail mode for this setup. Now, that big block of cold air hangs on really through all of next work week. This gets us all the way into Thursday, into Friday. This gets us into Saturday, and I think by the time we get to next Saturday, Sunday, the last couple of days of January here, the pattern likely changes back up, and that troughing moves out west and ridging moves in the east, and that'll switch things up, and we'll have a whole new pattern to talk about. But before we get there, that leaves a good 7 to 10 day stretch of winter weather chances in the east. All right, so let's talk about how cold exactly it could get here. And I don't think many folks are quite prepared probably for how cold this could be. All right, this is this afternoon, relatively mild actually into the plains out west. We're getting closer to average in the east, still chilly, but a little bit back to normal, we'll say, for this afternoon. Now we get to tomorrow afternoon below here. This is Friday. It's going to feel nice for a lot of folks out there into the plains from Iowa, Minnesota, all the way down into portions of the deep south. When I say nice, I mean nice for January 17th standards, so maybe not a picnic by any means, but definitely a lot warmer than it has been, and a nice little treat before what is going to be an absolute freezer that opens up into the weekend. So here we go, Friday afternoon. Definitely get out there, enjoy the nice weather, go for a walk. Do whatever you do whenever the weather's nice in January, because here comes Saturday afternoon, and you'll notice there's that Arctic front pushing south and east, bringing that very cold air. We've got temperatures 20 to 30 degrees below what they should be this time of year out into the Rockies, getting into the Great Plains, and all of that spilling eastbound. This is Sunday afternoon, very cold air, now getting into the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, staying in the freezer out into the plains, and then I think by the time we get to Monday afternoon, and especially Tuesday morning, this will probably be the peak of this cold air mass. With temperatures widespread 20 to 30, some places near 40 degrees below what they should be this time of year. And obviously that's going to be enough that you feel it out there for sure. So obviously that's good to know it's going to be cold, but let's put some actual numbers to that. This is from the National Weather Service. So this is their forecast that they're going for. This is what the experts are coming up with. These are morning temperatures for this coming Wednesday, rather. So waking up next Wednesday morning. Let me see what my other map is here. Actually, my bad. This is Tuesday afternoon. So my bad. Got my maps flipped up. This is next Tuesday afternoon temperatures, and you get the idea, folks. It's cold. In fact, we're probably not going to get above freezing in places like Charlotte, Raleigh, Birmingham, back into Little Rock. Shreveport will struggle to crack freezing. Dallas struggling to crack freezing. Meanwhile, we're struggling to crack 10 degrees in the Ohio Valley from Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, up into Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. This is about as cold as it gets, folks, with high temperatures not even getting above 10 degrees there. Teens for highs into the Tennessee Valley, likely there for many folks in the state of Kentucky, Missouri, and you get the point. Even up the I-95 corridor, temperatures struggling to get towards 20 for you folks by the time we get to about next Tuesday afternoon, and then you're waking up next Wednesday morning. You thought that was cold. Check out these morning lows below zero for West Virginia, Ohio, up into the interior Northeast, out through the Midwest, struggling to, kind of stay above the 0 degree line as you get into the early morning hours. We're down into the single digits for, I think, sections of the Carolinas, Virginia, back through Tennessee, Kentucky, out through much of the Central Plains, and that freezing line, folks, I wouldn't be surprised if Gainesville, Florida hits the freezing mark by the time we get into next Wednesday morning. That's just perspective on how cold this air mass is. So definitely going to be important. The snow is important, or will be important for whoever gets it. But this cold air is going to affect just about everybody. So go ahead and take whatever precautions you normally would now, or at least plan to take them as we go into early next week. All right. Now, one final hoop to jump through before we get to the big southern snow and ice potential, and that's kind of the snow potential with this pattern change. So here we go. This is Saturday morning. Our front at this point swinging through the east, bringing that cold air. And I don't think it'll be any surprise that that's going to fire up some precipitation. We'll have some snow to the north here through the Ohio Valley, through portions of Michigan into the interior Northeast, all rain in the southeast. Now, I do think the mountains of North Carolina, the mountains of the Virginias here, this could be snow, could be cold enough for that, so I'll keep you up to date as we get a little bit closer into time there, but you get the idea. This area moves through, not a big deal. Now, what could be a bigger deal is what happens Sunday. That kind of works on through, and you're thinking, all right, well, a light little event. The cold air is here now. We're good to go. And you could be good to go for the potential of some I-95 snow by the time we get to Sunday. So what's happening here, meteorologically speaking, is all of this cold air is rushing eastbound. And eventually it's going to kind of, well, if I could draw an arrow, that would probably help. Eventually it's going to run into the Atlantic seaboard here. And the Atlantic seaboard is a classic example of what we call baroclinic instability in meteorology. So basically what we're going to have is the cold air here and the warm air here. That with a little bit of lift is going to create low pressure right along the seaboard. You see it here in North Carolina. This is Sunday afternoon, according to our GFS model. And basically, with that cold air and that warm air, that wants to start spinning pretty quickly, and that spinning creates lift. And next thing you know, we've got precipitation building in. And that's what the GFS shows for Sunday afternoon. That coastal low beginning shows snow in the state of Virginia, but West Virginia into the Delmarva. Heck, even has a little bit of snow down into North Carolina, the Triad, Raleigh, seeing maybe some kind of rain snow mix Sunday evening would not surprise me. And then this begins to ride up the coast, and it's a nice little coastal I-95 event Sunday evening into Monday. Again, time above my head. This is 1 a.m. this coming Monday. You can see that winter weather potential from Southern Virginia all the way up the I-95 through the DMV, the Delmarva, up into the Delaware River areas there through Philadelphia, the entire state of New Jersey, into Long Island, even up into Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, seeing that potential for maybe a nice little winter weather event out of this. Now, still a little too soon to talk details on exact totals, but I don't think this will be a rain event or a ice event. I think it'll be all snow if the snow can fall. That'll be the bigger question. Do we get a favorable low pressure track like this model shows, or is it a little less favorable? But this could be a good little, maybe 3 to 6 inch event, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. We'll see. But again, I'm going to spare you from the exact details yet because they'll end up changing before we get there. But I think by the time we get into tomorrow and Saturday, we can start talking about more specifics with that one. All right, and that leads us perfectly into our winter weather potential for the South. So just about everyone here is going to have a shot. We talked about the Northeast, we talked about the Midwest today. Well, the Deep South, you're up next potentially next week. And here's the problem, okay? I do think we're going to get something, but my fear right now is the difference in the models. So I'm going to show you three main models today. We're going to look at the ICON model, the GFS model, and our European model. And all three models are showing completely different scenarios. That's the concern. The good news is the ensemble. So they're all pretty together on who has the best chance of seeing snow. So I'll be able to show you that. But in terms of exact solutions, folks, we're still kind of just throwing darts at a board and waiting for something to stick here in the model. So it's a very complicated setup. I'll try to explain it to my best abilities here. In fact, even myself, it's hard for my brain to kind of comprehend some of the pieces here. That's kind of how complicated it is. So we'll start with the icon. And what I really want you to notice whenever we're looking at these three models is back here in California. And notice this piece of energy. This is a classic trough. So basically, this is an extension of cold air. And troughs are notorious for firing up storms or low pressure or some sort of precipitation. So that's what's likely going to happen. Now, the icon pushes this trough all the way out into California. This is Tuesday morning, so keep that in mind. In fact, I'll keep it circled. Let's look at the GFS now for the exact same time frame. This is, again, folks, basically the exact same time. In fact, maybe it's a little bit further ahead, so we'll go all the way ahead. So this is the exact same moment in time. Let me go back. This is the icon. See that piece of energy? Now, this is favorable. What the icon is showing is favorable for southern winter weather. This is an extension of energy that's beginning to spin up, break off, and eventually would scoop along the Gulf Coast. That's what we want to see. What does the GFS show instead, though? Well, it shows that energy not getting nearly as far out. In fact, it still is holding on to this idea that we're going to have some little vortex over California. It's got the main piece of energy stuck all the way back out into the plains. So a very different look. Now, what about the European? What does the European show? Well, it's kind of a little bit closer to the GFS now, honestly. A couple days ago, it looked more like the icon. Now it looks a little bit more like the GFS. So you get the idea. Here's the icon. Here's the GFS. Here's the European. They're all quite different in how they look for this potential setup. Now, let me show you the icon and why it's favorable. So we've got that piece of energy out there. We'll move this ahead into Monday, Tuesday, and basically what happens by Tuesday afternoon is we get this big area of just kind of vorticity strung out from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. And what this would allow are little pieces of shortwave energy to kind of ride below it and create some lift, and that would override with our Arctic boundary, and that could lead to maybe multiple winter weather events. That's what the icon shows. That's the more favorable setup for winter weather. Let me show you what the GFS and the European show, and they're a little more in agreement now. So we'll move this ahead. Well, what happens basically is you get this big trough, and it just kind of stays buckled up in the east. It doesn't quite stretch out, and because of that, you don't get enough energy to kind of break off and spin up into its own storm by next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and therefore they don't even really have much of a storm on the operational runs. And then you get that other piece of energy that it's showing out near California, that gets cooked east, and then this produces a bigger storm by Friday instead of the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. But at that point, we begin to enter some warmer air, and it would still be a winter storm, but for different people than if we get the earlier energy that the icon shows. So that's the GFS. The European, folks, kind of a lot more similar to the GFS. Now you get that idea. Here's that big piece of energy in the east that kind of curls up. It's a lot different than the icon, which has that stretched out vortex that would lead to more waves of kind of winter precipitation, and then shows that bigger storm potential by about next Friday or Saturday. So it's a little concerning that the GFS and the European have backed away a little bit. Obviously not entirely what you want to see, but let's go ahead and take a look at the operational runs, and we'll do it in the same order. Those were our energy maps or our vorticity maps. Well, what about the operational runs? Do they still show snow or not so much? Well, let's start with the icon. Remember, this was the favorable one. This was the one that showed snow or showed a more favorable storm track, I guess is what we'll say. Now, this is what it shows on the actual model. We'll move it ahead into time, and you'll notice here's that first wave of winter weather. This is Tuesday afternoon down into Texas, Louisiana, seeing that winter precipitation firing up and becoming a nice little wave of winter weather. And then that continues eastbound. And you can see that winter weather along the southeast coastline from the Florida Panhandle all the way up into coastal South Carolina, coastal North Carolina. And then we get another wave of winter weather. This is as far out as the model goes, but this would be by next Thursday, rather. So you get the idea, a nice little favorable look. Now, what about the GFS model? What does it show? Well, again, this was a very different look in the energy map, and because of that, it's a very different looking storm. Tuesday afternoon, folks, it doesn't really have much of anything. It's got a little bit of energy down near Texas that tries to produce some light winter weather, nothing much more than that, and then it gets the bigger piece of energy by Thursday, Friday, and has a major winter storm in the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley, into portions of the East Coast, and then even tries to ride this up into the Northeast as a winter weather event. And it's just completely different than what it looked like a day or two ago, and delays the storm until about next Thursday or Friday. What about the European model? What does it show from overnight? Well, here it is. This is into Tuesday. We do get that storm. It's a light signal from Texas, Louisiana, and then it gets close to the southeast coastline, clips the Outer Banks of North Carolina with a big snowstorm, but it's very suppressed. And what's happening, again, is this trough orientation is not very favorable. It's not spinning up in time, so it stays kind of in an unfavorable orientation. By the time it becomes favorable, it's just too little too late, and our storm is out to sea here, well off the eastern seaboard. And we don't get much of anything. And then that next signal comes by next Thursday, Friday. But like the GFS, it's a bit warmer by then, and then just doesn't look nearly as favorable for a big southern snow. So obviously, all of that's a little concerning, and you're thinking, okay, well, that's not great. What happened to our snow? Well, it's not to say it's not going to happen. In fact, we're still a couple days away, so it's not uncommon to see kind of these swings in the models. But these are the ensembles, and this is really what you want to look at this range. Again, we're still probably about 5 or so days away, and let's take a look at what they're showing. So here we go. These are the European ensembles, the chance of at least an inch of snow falling, and still a very favorable look down here into southern Texas, into Louisiana, still running about a 40-50% chance of a good little snow event, and then into the Carolinas, a big burst of snow potential as well through the Outer Banks, kind of like the operational run showed there, even down into Myrtle Beach, Charleston, and then lower chances as you get further inland. So my folks in the upstate, the western Carolinas, back towards North Georgia, North Alabama, northern Mississippi, this might be one of those storms where you kind of have to watch people to the south if you get snow. You might remember 2018, that might ring a bell. That was one of those storms that the low country of South Carolina got pummeled by nearly half a foot of snow, and areas like Charlotte, Columbia got nothing. This could be one of those setups. Now, again, we're 5 days away, and I've seen so many times that these things trend inland at the last second. That's still a very real possibility. It's also a very real possibility that this is just too suppressed. It's a little too cold for our own good here, and it's just cold and dry. All three are possibilities. We've got the suppressed look, we've got the it trends back inland, and then we've got the middle road option, which is what the ensembles show, and that would paint a pretty good coastal winter storm here through the Gulf Coast and up into the southeastern coastline from the Carolinas all the way down into Georgia. So that's the European there. You can see those snow chances. I'll even look at ahead that next snow signal. Here's the next signal, a little more favorable for the Northeast, the Tennessee and Ohio Valley by next Friday, Saturday. But that's a little bit further out in the time. And again, we'll get there when we get there. All right, the GFS ensembles, same story, folks. It still has the signal, even if the operational run doesn't really show it so much. Now, a little less than the European, but still good back into Texas, Louisiana, running about a 40% chance or so of a nice little winter weather event. Back into the coastal sections of the Carolinas, back into the Outer Banks, down into Horry County, towards Georgetown, Charleston. So you kind of get the idea here between these models. A couple places that are favored right now are back into Louisiana and Texas, and then back into the low country of South Carolina, up into the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Are kind of the two areas that I think are most likely in the deep south to get winter weather out of this. Now, those are the most likely areas. But anywhere in kind of this circled area is still running the shot. Well, maybe not quite that far south into Florida, but you get the idea. Anywhere in that circled area, though, is still running the shot of winter weather next week. It's too soon to mark anyone really outside of that green circle off the map with this storm system. And then, again, this would just be the Tuesday, Wednesday one. The Thursday, Friday, Saturday storm potential, that includes even more people that are still in the running for snow out of that one. Now, I'll throw a bone here. Last map I'll show you for all my snow lovers out there. This is the Canadian ensembles. And in fact, you know what? I'll throw you even more of a bone. Let me show you the operational Canadian, because I never did. The Canadian has continued to be the most bullish with this storm. So let's take a look at it from overnight and see what it shows. In fact, I don't think I've even looked at it myself, but here we go. This is into Tuesday, Wednesday, and there's the storm. It's a big winter storm for everyone in the Deep South, including areas a little bit further north. Stays a big winter storm for areas along the coast, even the Gulf Coast getting in on the action and around New Orleans, Biloxi, Mobile, and just shows a real blockbuster winter storm, and then even that second potential by Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So a little bit closer to what the icon showed. Is what the Canadian has. Now, the even more exciting part is its ensembles. Same thing I showed you, the chance of at least an inch of snow falling. I mean, this is as good of a signal as you could ask in the Deep South. Portions of Louisiana, Texas, the Canadian says it's a guaranteed, just matter of fact, you're going to see big snow. And then it also has a big kind of signal here into the Carolinas and into Georgia. Now, that looks great. I love that. You love that if you're a snow lover. If you're not a snow lover, you don't love that. But again, we've got a lot of details to iron out here. So we're kind of running a battle right now between the ensembles and the operational runs. Always lean towards the ensembles, especially at this range. However, the operational runs are a little concerning that they're backing off a little bit. Good news, though, is we still got plenty of time to figure it out. Today is Thursday, and the storm really probably wouldn't happen until about next Tuesday. So that gives us Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday. So about 4 or 5 days to figure things out. And that's more than enough time for this to trend into a big winter storm, and also more than enough time for this to completely disappear. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about over the next couple of days, and I'll keep you up to date. Alrighty, folks, we'll quickly add, I will do everything in my power to have an evening video out tonight. Thursday class schedule for me is kind of crazy, but I should have about a 2-hour block sometime this afternoon to run home and kind of post something for you. So I'll do my best, but if I don't have one, I'll be back tomorrow morning, and we should be good morning and evening through the weekend to continue tracking the storm, and probably even do a couple live streams as well sprinkled in there. Alrighty, folks, y'all have a great one. Stay safe out there. Stay warm. I'll see you all next time.